The Karugia court had given the decision by, I think, evening of that night, and only the Chief Justice has the legal mandate has the legal mandate to ensure that he can create an advanced position where a bench can sit to make a decision that's critical to the country. But that the Deputy Chief Justice in the presence, in a situation where the CJ herself was still in the country, was able to convene a bench at night, be able to listen to the matter at night, and give the directive at night, so that they're able to be the deadline of 8 a.m. the next day, is something that every Kenyan should be able to question.
Yes, let me just ask you a question, because there's too much conversation on that, but I wish to move to something else. Because under this, we also understand that the president's legal team had actually also withdrawn from the case. But now, how does this alter now the defense approach? Because I know going forward, there will have been allegations that the president was involved in this and that, and a lot of that. Let me just get your view, how this is generally going to alter. Let me start with you, sir.
Quite to me is that we are bearing the most important element of this entire process to what happened, to what extent was Gachagua impeached, and whether the process was fair. Because I'll tell you, whether you ask me whether Gachagua is guilty of offenses that were laid against him, I don't know. But I know one thing he's guilty of.
Yes.
They lied to Kenyans with unnecessary slogans, with unnecessary promises. Him and his boss went squandering the public resources, doing nothing but overtaxing Kenyans, to an extent that even the basic dream of Kenya, which is food, shelter, security, healthcare, social protection, all of them are now to the dream.
Yes.
Basically, our economy is in ICU. And to that extent, that's what I'm saying. If we had the opportunity to impeach the entire UDA brigade, I'll be a happy Kenyan. So me, I don't feel any remorse for Gachagua. I'm sorry if you want me to. I don't feel it. I doubt whether Kenyans feeling. Even the Murema that he keep saying that we should not touch, I doubt whether they are remorseful for him. Because that is the guilt charge that him and his boss has. But now we are happy that when Right Honorable Raila Odinga kept quiet, now UDA are fighting each other.
Okay.
Now they have removed the deputy president
Yes.
through a process that was very flawed. I'll tell you for free.
Yeah.
Because to impeach the deputy president, the first thing under the Political Parties Act, they needed Chapter 14.
Yes.
They needed to expel him from the party first.
Yes.
You get, because this is a political process.
Yes.
You expel him from the party,
Yes.
then you proceed to impeach him from the house.
Yes.
Even appointment of Kindiki as a deputy president was a flawed process. Because first, this is a political appointee.
Yes.
It's not a cabinet appointee.
Okay.
He needed to have resigned 3 months
Yes.
from his seat
Yes.
to join UDA as a political member of UDA before he could be appointed as deputy president. So the entire thing is flawed. We cannot start arguing against this thing at the court level when we are forgetting that this was a political lynch.
Yes.
And if it's a political lynch, it's not in my place to say he was right or wrong.
Yes.
But I've told you that he's guilty as charged
Yes.
for failing Kenya.
Okay, Mr.
And him
Mulima.
and his
Yes.
boss should go home.
Yes, Mr. Mulima.
Yes.
It's when you talk about this case, because
Yes.
it is very quite critical.
Yes.
We have to agree. And one of the things that actually have been said of
Yes.
the legal team
Yes.
that is actually defending Gachagua
Yes.
is that they have failed to look into the key issues actually.
Yes.
And they're now chasing the rat and letting
Yeah.
the elephant actually
Yes.
run. And this could be what I could term a defense mechanism maybe just to, and of course so many people have said that this is trying to pass time.
Yes.
When people do not really understand what they are really up to, because they're not actually talking or saying the issues, touching on the very issues that actually they have gone to the court. From where you sit, now that the judges have refused to recast themselves from this, what are the strategies, defense strategies
Yes.
actually do they have even going forward? And where do we see this case even headed to?
Rushing to go where? Because we have the country, and the country is not vacating from, or it's not moving from the map or from the world map. So we fail to understand why the rush, because again, before the case starts, it is good that everyone feels that they are being, the court is fair, and especially even to agree with Oringa, Orianga. I would say this, that the judiciary should be very careful. In this 2010 constitution, the judiciary should be very, very careful. Why? They are setting precedents which are going to form basis of how other cases will be dealt with. So they should very much try to refuse to be dragged by the politicians. You see, politicians doesn't care, and politicians,
Just to talk a bit,
Yes.
to tell them, they see it, because according to them,
Yes.
there was a bit of an intimidation
Yes.
coming from the lawyers, the legal team from Rigathi Gachagua.
Yes.
Do you think that maybe this is Rigathi Gachagua digging in his own grave?
You see, it depends on where one sits.
Yes.
Or from which, we say from where you stand. Because they have different opinions of how this matters, depending on where each person's heart is.
Yes.
So if you are against you are for the impeachment of Gachagua, then you look from a different prism. If you are against it, then you look, but if you are to look this matter objectively, we actually expect the court to be very careful that they are not murdered in the politicians' dirt. You see, they say that the politics is because as much as this is a political matter, because you can see they have, as Orianga is saying here,
Hypothetically.
they have their own scores that they want to settle, but they want to drag everyone on board. Yes, this is a problem of UDA. So if UDA have got a problem, why do they want to drag all the others and even other arms of the government into their own muddle? So if they are settling scores, let them fight it.
Right.
But then using the what is existing or the courts, so the courts should be very careful not to be dragged into this. And how can they be careful? is trying to make sure that in the public opinion, if you look at the social media today and yesterday, you'll find that we are dividing this country in terms of opinions. And yet, it took a lot of time to build trust, and where we should not go back to where we had tribal animosity.
The
That you come from
2007
there,
stop
you come from
violence.
Morima,
Mr.
you
Murimi,
come from...
Let me just ask you still. This whole controversy
Yes,
is here. And there's a very basic question that is being asked.
yes,
That yes, Gachagua is fighting
Yes.
this battle. He really wants to win, of course. But who does he want to really deputize? Does he still want to deputize William Ruto, who he has actually said that William Ruto is a betrayer? Does he want to betray? Does he want to deputize a betrayer? Does he want to deputize a man who does not believe again in whatever he said? Because number two, he talked about all this Sheikh and Shah. He talks about a Danny deal, which he is against. He says he's against most of the very
Yes.
critical projects that
Yes.
President Uhuru is actually trying to
Uhuru
work
Ruto.
on.
Yeah.
Who does he want to deputize?
Yeah.
If the court then allows him
The-
to deputize, does he then,
yeah,
from him,
Yes.
want to hold Kenya by the scrotum, by not allowing Kenya to move forward, so that he can wreck from within?
very good question.
Yes.
Because if you look at history, the deputy or the president today was a deputy of the President Uhuru.
Yes.
They remained despite probably their problems. But if we were to take even at our
Does that
workplaces,
affect Kenya?
let me give you another example. That when you are at workplaces and we are work colleagues, we don't need to agree on that we should be friends so that we can work together. Actually, we can have differences. But then when it comes to work, when I bring this file to your desk, you'll work on it professionally. So since there's a profession that they are working on, it's just official duties.
Right.
Because the deputy president, it is very clear for the deputy president, a work that is slotted is assistant to the president. And that one we know it is not difficult. One, because we don't want a yes man. We know that they want to bring in a yes person. And do you know one thing, Kwach?
Oh, just because
That
of time.
a yes person, a yes person when he sees issues, like now he sees that, oh, Shah is being introduced and it's not good. You are not supposed to speak. Then what do you call Adani? If he talks that, he's helping his boss.
Okay.
Because me, actually, I would not
Very
want
point,
a
very
yes
point.
person.
Most
And
of
then
it.
to finish on that,
Yes.
I would say that working together, when you work together as a team, you do not necessarily require to be of the same, to be agreeing on everything
In
and
the same
seeing from the
universe
same.
every time and
Yeah,
again.
everything.
Ngaira.
So you can work together
Right.
even when you are that.
Right, Gaira, to bring you in, do you think the arms of government, the principle of separation of powers is not being instilled in these institutions?
You know, Kenyans were not stupid when they toiled for many years to deliver the 2010 constitution. That, you know, did not just come with sweat, George, it came with blood as well, because we lost lives. And one of the things that we were struggling to ensure that is enshrined into the constitution was the clear separation of powers, so that you can then have institutions that are able to check the executive and the excesses of the executive. Because in the Nyayo era, we had that issue of Mheshimiwa Rais amesema, you know, and a powerful presidency that could not be checked. That's why we had to expand the judiciary and its mandate and create the Judicial Service Commission, which is an independent structure. Nobody in the Judicial Service, Kwach and my brother George, from the Chief Justice to the sweeper, is supposed to answer to William Ruto as a person. None of them is an employee of the president. The president cannot hire or fire them. They're employees of the Judicial Service Commission. There's a code of conduct as to how they're supposed to conduct themselves. And there's a process of disciplinary process in the event that a human being which can be fault at some point, and within the judicial, the administrative structure, so they're able to actually be able to oversight the people and be able to hold them to account. That's why even a judge can be, you can contest and petition a judge, is taken through a tribunal and is fired, like Justice Chitembwe, I think you understand. So that is an independent arm of government that is catered for by the taxpayers' money and not President William Ruto or any future president. You understand? And none of the officials of judiciary have, or President William Ruto or any other future president, any answer. They answer to an institution that has a constitutional mandate, and there's a way of punishing them in the event they've misconducted themselves. So when you hear that there are people, Kenyans have fears that probably there's somebody in the executive who's twisting the judiciary in any way, that is in fact what you call a gross violation of the constitution, because then it means somebody is overstepping his mandate as an executive to be able to do that, not just even judiciary, to parliament as well, because parliament is also not a department in the executive. They have a core mandate which every Kenyan understands, that is to legislate, represent, and actually oversight government. All the 290 members of parliament, my brother George and Kwach, do not owe this president anything in as far as the oversight is concerned. They're supposed to just come and serve the interest of their people. And when you have an issue that is a national issue, be it taxation or how a policy decision that has been made by the executive, they have a duty to oversight that institution, because that is what they are paid to do so. So when you hear a tragic event like the one that we're witnessing in this country, that you have a parliament which is pretty much like a department in the executive, then you need to understand that the country is in trouble. Kwach have said on this show and many times on other shows that when you hear countries that have collapsed, they have collapsed because the institutions have collapsed, because the people in those countries do not have an alternative where they can go and report. And that is actually what contributed to what we had in 2007. The opposition felt that going to the judiciary, where they let Justice Gisheru, the CJ that was there, Gisheru at that time, they felt like going to that court, we are not going to get any solutions. And so they did not believe in that institution. It is until when Maraga brought the confidence into that institution that people believed if the judiciary can now nullify a 40 billion shilling presidential petition, then maybe a smaller case can be handled fairly. That trust, unfortunately, we are losing it because of the kind of conduct that this executive is engaging in, and no Kenyan should accept it.
Let me just ask you, I know you have quite much to...
I wanted to interject to the
I
issue.
suppose I'm going to give you the time.
Yes.
Mr. Lianga, you not talk for some time.
Yes.
I'll even just ask, do you have a crisis in the country from where you sit?
A serious one. In fact, that's what I wanted to comment what Brother Murima said, which is not correct. He said that we should not...
I'm entitled to my
not,
opinion,
I
sir.
agree. He said that we should not be in a hurry, that Kenya is not being removed from the map. But do you know, currently, if we were to succeed the president, of course, our president is not immortal, assuming something happened that is no longer with us in this country, then we have a serious crisis in our hand. Because we don't have a deputy president, number one. Number two, the speaker, who is supposed to succeed the president for like 60 days before another election, does not have the power to appoint any commissioner. Therefore, the speaker cannot constitute IEBC. Therefore, Kenya cannot go to an election. You understand? So, meaning succeeding the president will be impossible. And if that is impossible, we'll end the civilian rule as it is. Because we might have now other cases where the military come in to say, let us have other ways of managing the country. So, the judiciary should move with speed to solve this issue. It is not their work to fix the UDMS. Let them respond to this issue so that we should have substantive deputy president in place, because that is the succession that is envisaged in our constitution. Without that, we are in a serious problem. That is number one. Number two, again, my brother said that we have separation of power, and I agree, that is there. But you know, that is in plain paper. There's also what we call bipartisan approach in several issues. There are times when the judiciary decide on matters not based on whether you are right or wrong, or whether you are a criminal or guilty, but they decide on matters based on the interest of the nation. This issue will not be decided, and I can assure you it will be decided very fast. But it will not be decided whether Gachagua is right or wrong, whether he was impeached right or wrong, but it will be decided on the basis of national interest. I'm not saying how, but it will be their decision to make. Why? Because we are in a serious crisis, and we are in a serious limbo as a nation. You get? Finally, to my third point on whether we have a crisis or not. I cannot tell you that when Gen Z took onto the street, the issues that they were protesting about the overtaxation, the double taxation. The illegal elements of that act are being introduced back through the veil of chaos. Somebody in the executive is clever enough to use this prolonged chaos because they know Kenyans are emotional, including myself. We are more focused on people crying, people who should not cry in the first place, people who had the privilege to change our lives, they did not do that. We are focusing on those cry, we are focusing on those lamentation,
Right.
on print and electronic,
Right.
forgetting that those issues that people died in the street, to be removed or
Right.
not to be applied, is now being applied through back.
We are going to pick it up from there. It is time for us to take a short break. We'll be right back with more here on The Insight.
So much and welcome back to The Insight. Of course, this conversation continues on the Rigathi Gachagua case, of course, of impeachment. It's a case that is actually, it's controversial as it is, of the embattled deputy president. But as we continue with this case, there's some critical questions actually that we ask and we need to answer. And one of them is on the stability of the country. Because when you talk about the law is not independent on its own self. Because there are several other questions that actually are raised on this very impeachment case of Rigathi Gachagua. And we've mentioned that we have time. We have a lot of time.
Yes.
Yet there are other people who think, like Olianga, that we don't have that time. Because what if the president dies? What will happen? This and this and that. And this speaks about the stability of the country. So when we talk about law generally, does the law also look at the stability of the country when determining cases? Number one, this case, going forward, how will it even impact on the on actually the relationship now between the executive and even the judiciary? And after that, permit me to ask that, because going forward, we are going to see, and we have seen various instances where people have played, where we have seen various parts, people have played to be victims, so that the courts can actually favor them. Could this now be the case? Olianga, you will get to answer that. Could this be such a case? And what would even that mean and portend even to the future precedents of such cases, if people have to play victims and to cry for them to plead for the courts to actually listen to them. Let's begin with you, sir.
Yes. What is happening is that there is an agency that is being created which is not there. We know that when the court did what you call a stay, and we have, this is not a new thing that is happening. We have had governors being impeached, like we have Kawira Mangasa, who's still in office. Yeah. What is wrong when the stays happen? The DP is in. The DP is not a devil that he has not been holding that office. So when he stayed by the courts, we don't have a vacuum because we don't have another deputy who has been sworn in. So we don't have the court has stayed. So we still have, just like in Kawira's case, we have a deputy. So there is no much agency in terms of doing, to the extent of doing an irregularity. Because the matters that are being brought here is that we need to impeach, we need to handle this just like we did in the parliament. But you know, if you look at the parliament, we are talking that, is our parliament still independent? Are they independent? Are we going to take this also to the judiciary? Because now we are looking at the judiciary to be the most independent because we know the executive should not take charge.
This is taking too much of the country's time.
Yeah, where are we rushing to? I'll go back to there. Because the people who are creating this crisis, this is political. And as my friend has said, other salient matters that are supposed to be discussed now.
Yes.
Right now we are supposed to be talking about PPIs. Yes. That is public-private
we'll talk about
that.
Yes.
So that is what it should be the agenda.
Yes.
But right now, the politicians have set agenda on an impeachment at the expense of other salient issues that concern the public more. So what they are talking every day is, and you can see, deals are being done as this as the charade. We can call it a charade, as the charade is happening in court to distract completely people. So we should refuse to be distracted. You know that right now we don't want the arms of the government that we rely on are 3 arms. But then also we have other important agencies of the government like the police. And you know that now you cannot do a protest. That has completely been quashed. So are we turning into a police state? So we need to look at where we are going, whether we are backloading our gains, which now brought the constitution, and to see, to start vetting those people who are in charge of implementing this constitution, to see even during the 2020 constitution, whether they voted yes or no. Because the problem could be starting from there.
Okay, sir.
I think you asked a very fundamental question. What happened next after this case? And that's what I think I started even by making a comment on. That with or without Gachagua, the UDA brigade has failed. In fact, I'll tell you for free that the agenda of coming to the government was that don't elect Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. And even immediately they formed the government, they took 1 year telling Kenyans that they're the one who won election and that Raila Odinga lost. So Raila Odinga was the topic. Now, when Raila Odinga now chose to focus on other things like AU, so it could not become a topic, now they had to create a crisis to manufacture one. Probably, I've never been a fisherman before, but I'm told when the boat is sinking, sometimes you sacrifice your own to at least keep the boat afloat. So whether that is their strategy, it is for them to decide.
Yes.
Mine is to tell Kenyans that what has been ailing us for long is Tribe Project.
Yes.
Tribe Project is where failures try to persuade the public through emotion to make you feel remorseful for them and to make them survive politically. Gachagua and his boss failed us, and therefore is going home. Is going home is justified by Kenyans. You get. So the fact that my brother keep on confusing, currently we have a crisis because we don't have a substantive deputy president. That's why we are worried as Kenya. Gachagua is not a deputy president because he was picked by...
And Kevin, since you've mentioned that,
Yes.
do you think the judiciary are failing to interpret some of these laws to Kenyans? Because it is their work, the Chief Justice is quiet. Some of these things, you get Parliament getting in, also trying to interpret. Who has this sole responsibility to put it clear to all Kenyans?
Thank you so much. That's a good question. I believe judiciary in this matter, their work is to wait until the case or an issue comes to their desk for them to respond. You are mentioning the Chief Justice. Chief Justice cannot be seen to be either having high-handedness or basically interfering with the decision that is to be made by her junior. You get. So in this case, what the Chief Justice is trying to do is to allow the three-bench judge to decide on the matter. In any case, the former deputy president Gachagua team feel that they have not been given a fair hearing, then they have the opportunity to appeal, and it can go in that direction until the case reaches the Supreme Court, where now the Chief Justice and the seven-bench Supreme Court will now have a chance to be able to direct Kenyans in this matter. My argument is this matter is one, that the Gachagua lawyers are not focusing on the main issue which they were complaining about, which is the process of impeachment at the Senate. They keep on demanding that the other players have to change the team or to change the keeper. And I don't think that is working for them. I think it's time wasting so that they can keep the country in a dreadlock or in a serious crisis that we are now. Because currently, under the succession in our constitution, the president cannot be succeeded successfully. Take it to the bank.
George Ngaira,
Yes.
Peter and Kevin are saying that there's a crisis and they feel like all this is digress to the real issues.
Yes.
We've just seen hours ago the courts have squashed out the deal between Adani and Kentraco. That signed a deal of 95 billion shillings to
Transmission line.
for transmission of power line. What is your take on that?
I am extremely proud of the High Court for taking such bold decisions, because those who've taken time to understand the history of this country and where we've come from the Nyayo regime, where we used to have a high-handed presidency, where declarations would come from sometimes in toilets, public toilets, and then a cabinet minister comes out of a toilet and gives an order that has not been publicly queried to the public and approved by the people, because the government of Kenya is not an NGO. It's funded by Kenyan taxpayers, and then so there's a consultative format that has now been created in the name of public participation, so that certain important decisions can then not just be made like that, but it must be done with the participation of the average Kenyan. And I think that has been the debate, and I'm happy now that even public participation is a main topic. Because now what is being challenged even in court now is what is the definition of real public participation? How far and wide must it be? Can I collect a bunch of friends and be show up at Uhuru Park, have lunch and say I've done public participation? Or should we go back to where the voter is and then do it at the ward level? A very important debate. And one of the things that I'm very proud of this guy, I'm not a fan of Deputy President Gachagua, but one of the things that I'm very proud of him is the decision to go to court for the benefit of future leaders. I might be one day be a deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. This will give us a precedence of how to go about it. And I'm praying that the courts on the Adani deal, the way you're saying, can continue being bold and make decisions, especially where they feel that Kenyans have not been fully involved, so that then we can question that document and see what are we offering. Some of the deals, it's amazing that a character can come from a country wherever it comes from and is able to seal deals worth $500 billion. You know, it's not just the 95 billion at Ketraco. We also have the almost 300 billion project for the airport, and then there's something else in between there. When you total that is $500 billion shillings. I can tell you, Kwach, there is no department, state department, that can enter into any PPP negotiations over 100 million without the president's direct involvement. So for you to give one individual deals worth $500 billion, it just tells you how much the president has interest in this, because it's impossible, not even in Kenya. in any country in the world to make such a commitment. And so Kenyans who are the actual guarantors of what happens here, because we might not be here 100 years from now, but there will be Kenyans in this country. And they will have to query what is the deal that was agreed on at the JKIA and many of these deals, or where you have public assets being handed over to private individuals. It's a serious issue, and only the court and the judiciary can be able to protect Kenyans.
And do you think the international law can be applied in this case?
Before we go to the international law, this is a local case because it's a local deal here. It's until when this is exhausted locally here is when that you can be able to do that. But you must understand that the assets in question are in Kenya. So we can't debate this somewhere in London or somewhere in Hague to be able to debate this.
Yeah.
Marema, I want to get in.
Yes, George. Here, if you look at what is at stake, and we are happy that the courts have managed to have stopped that, are national assets, key national assets. When you look at an airport, that is the only asset we have as a sovereign that we can identify our heritage with.
It's a gateway to Africa.
It's a gateway to Africa. When you look at power, that is our key infrastructure project that is very key. If you look at the deals that have been signed of Mombasa-Nairobi Expressway, which is actually giving away our roads, that we'll be paying to a profiteer, private profiteer. And to make matters worse, is a private profiteer from another country. It's a multinational from another country. And so many assets, government assets, are being given and have been given out in the confusion of the impeachment and all that. So what is happening under the water, other hard dealings that are going on would shake people. So if you look at the bank, a bank can be able to make a profit of 110 billion within a financial year. That is money enough to employ all the unemployed youths who are committing suicide after graduating from the university. Why? Is because if that money, we use the model of China of building roads. Do you know if you start one project to build roads, how many people you employ? Accountants, cashiers, what do you call it, secretaries, mechanics, drivers, engineers, all that. So we need to have a paradigm shift where now instead of very much relying on the PPPs, because the PPP lie should now be exposed. It has been a lie that PPPs can help people. Actually, once you give out your asset to a PPP, the one P that is public is the one that loses at the expense or they lose, and then those profiteers will profit for you for that. If there were ordinary concessions, a concession is where if I build for you this, I'll recoup my money and get out. But now, at JKIA and these roads that Mombasa-Nairobi concession that has been signed in America covertly, and then sham public participation done, these are things that are actually the topics that we should be having on television stations, not impeachment. These are things that should be topics in our parliament, not impeachment. So that is how we can reclaim our country, and this is what we need to tell our youth, Gen Z, that your country is being taken. Your jobs are being taken by the PPPs. So when they bring in, we know how the PPPs work. When they come and do a road, or when they come and do an airport, they'll claim to recoup their money in that area. So they are going to manage your asset by correction of funds, and management, every management. So you cede or you give away your right and sign that you have given your right. So you'll be just watching ni kama your house. Someone comes and proposes that he's going to finish the 2 remaining stories. But he takes that house of yours for that years, correcting rent, and when he'll give back that house, probably already you'll be in the second, third generation. George.
So just to add to my brother Marema, I think I agree with him 100%.
Thank you.
One is that UDA Brigade has failed. Our economy is in ICU. The doctors who are supposed to treat this economy, who are the UDA Brigade, are busy disinheriting Kenyans of the leftover what is our economy is. And I'll give an example. If you use, for example, the telecom, the Orange Farm from French, that took over telecom for 3 years. What they did was to use the asset of telecom acquired loan, which under the capital flight of 30 billion US dollar. This money was never invested in the country. It was taken outside for them to expand on their business outside. Then they leave the asset with you, they leave you with the loan, then the government repeat it again, pay the loan, then give it to somebody else. So it's like we are giving 30 billion to somebody who does nothing, then we pay that billions, then give it to another person. I'll give you an example of a state enterprise that is working well for Kenya, and it has never been given under the PPPs. That is KCB Bank. Look at the likes of Safaricom. I think the best model that we are seeing is with those two institutions. The best we can do as a country is to look into ways of transforming all the parastatal. People call them parastatal, but these are state enterprises, so that we reshape them in the format of KCB Bank, in the format of Safaricom, and in the format of Kenya Power, and improve their efficiency. The issue of Adani is conning them.
You know,
They are stealing the public asset from us. They are using a lot of secrecy. And I agree with my brother, when public participation, we saw that there was high-level public participation in every ward in Kenya for impeachment of Gachagua. But we can't see even a public participation in Embakasi, where where JKIA belong.
Yeah.
So there is never public participation. These things are done in secrecy, and I think the country is being run by thugs, because even the cabinet secretaries cannot answer the questions to Adani. They cannot even answer questions to Shah.
Just 1 minute, because they're shutting down. My plea is that the Kenyan courts remain the last man standing in this battle against an extremely rogue and corrupt regime that we have led by this president, so that they can push us and buy us time to get to the next election. But watch, the public tearing of these Adani documents should be done at Kasarani when we set off this president, and shortly after deport any character that is associated with them. Because thank God that they're talking of 30 years and these ones are exiting in 2 years' time. So even if they were to be handed this contract in the next 1 year or two, they'll still be at implementation stage, enough to tear those documents and chase these characters out of this country. It's unfortunate that anybody could even imagine that he wants to hand over an asset like JKIA, a public asset that is visible to any person that resides in this country, to some character from some fishy country that wants to come and be able to dominate our economy, that is able to even score deals worth $500 billion. For an economy that is just about $100 billion, that is just way too much. We must promise Kenyans, because we are part of a new team that we're working on for a new movement that we're going to go all the way to the 2027 elections. And I can confirm to you that part of our manifesto will include the tearing of these stupid documents that are being used as contracts publicly at Kasarani to confirm to Kenyans.
And speaking of 2027 election, they are seeking for a 7-year term on the elective post.
That is outright provocation of Kenyans that will never materialize. And nobody on earth can be able to alter the time limit of the presidency without a referendum, unless if they're calling for a civil war.
To me, that will never work. I think it's a decoy, so that we cannot focus, so that we remain unfocused on the main issues that is affecting us. The Adani deal in healthcare, in transportation, and in energy. That is what they are trying to cover under the shade of a lot of crisis. That is a decoy, because that thing requires referendum. You understand? Change of the structure of government requires referendum. It cannot be changed by members of parliament. They know it. You get. And currently, we don't even have an IBC to carry out a referendum. Leave alone the fact that referendum will be an impeachment of the entire UD administration. I'm telling you this. So it's a decoy. It's a waste of public time, and it's meant to confuse Kenyans from the main issues affecting them.
I am in 100% agreement with you that this is a distraction ploy, where now, because that cannot happen, extension of term cannot happen because it requires a referendum. So it's a decoy just now to fool people, while the actual things that are happening, because now what we want to see is that we are calling out the president, that is the executive, parliament, and judiciary. Actually, the two, the parliament and the executive. So far, they have performed below par. So now we are looking at the at the courts. But we are happy that the courts are a last resort, and we can see they have stopped that, and also our port access, that is Mombasa-Nairobi highway, should and must be secured. We cannot give our key gateway to Kenya, East and Central Africa. That is our port access and the airport. Thank you.
It's unfortunate that the current Bushmen in government were not there when people were busy on the streets paying for their lives for us to get this constitution. And I pray that patriotic Kenyans keep this country at bay, because the government and the National Assembly has completely failed. We cannot count on the National Assembly. We only have a single hope that we have in the judiciary, where we can have great judges that can be able to contain these Bushmen until we get rid of them. Thank you.
Interesting. I'll go to my editorial tonight. This country is known for its historic events and rulings across the democratic terrains of Africa and the world. Well, the leadership is calling for everyone's voice should matter. In retrospect, with the political lineups and party politics has trimmed and gleaned by watchdogs, indeed gleans Kenya as a democratic cradle for the universe. A canvas of seismic progress that wields power. The time is it is needed the most. The 2010 constitution is quite powerful, and it is an equalizer of poor leadership and governance. Ruto has an appeal task to make every elected leader accountable. That word and oath should be a stark reminder that he is the president for every citizen in this country. Any leader who would polarize Kenya absolutely has no intention for this country, but treat us to paths that will stop violence and breed animosity. Let's embrace good governance and growth, and that is my editorial.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us for this conversation. It has been indeed a candid conversation. And of course, you who is at home, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation as we looked deeply into the complex case of Rigathi Gachagwa's impeachment case, of course, the embattled deputy president. But of course, one thing that of course we get to learn is that this case holds a far-reaching implications politically and of course maybe economically in the country. And this is because whether this is a step towards accountability or towards survival of the government, as Olianga puts it, that we have to sacrifice one your own for the boat to survive. Whether that's the case or whether it is a politically charged maneuver, of course, it still has consequences. And thank you so much, gentlemen. Of course, we had Peter Murima joining us for this. We had, of course, Kevin Olianga and George Ngaira. Thank you so much for being a guest here for quite some time. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And of course, everyone else who has made this a success, we wish you a very good night. My name is Eugene Kwach, and this is GBS TV, The Insight.